Okay, so starting off with call recording, you can enable call recording on a per extension basis. You have to make sure you have a professional or enterprise license. You can enable this under the options tab of any user extension. You can either choose to disable call recording, record all calls, or record only external calls if you don't want to record extension to extension calls. And you can also allow users to start and stop recordings on their own. That requires an enterprise key. And then also, if you go to the dashboard here and then go to recording, this will give you your recording quota. And if you click into this, you can actually change your recording quota. You can choose to auto clean. So this deletes any old recordings older than whichever time you set here. So by default, that's 30 days. You can also set up email notifications for when you reach a certain percentage of your quota. That's going to go to the admin email that I'll show you in a second here. And then you can also compress recordings, so it's going to be lower quality recordings, but it'll take up less space. And so the admin email, so that would just be set under settings, and then email, and then notifications. You can also, we'll actually come to this section, I think, later on too. But you can set up multiple emails if you want. They just have to be comma separated. Okay, and then we'll talk about forwarding rules as well. So we did talk, this is one thing I did go over yesterday, but we'll go over it again once more today, in case there was anyone that missed that yesterday. So depending on the status an extension is in, we'll change the forwarding rules for that extension. So right now we're changing the forwarding rules for the available status. So all changes we make from here down are applied to the available status. So we have options like for internal calls specifically, if this extension doesn't answer a call within 20 seconds, it'll forward to this location. So either you can send it to a voicemail, another extension's voicemail, you can send it to a mobile phone, another extension, you can send it to call another extension, or forward to an outside number. Forward to mobile is going to forward to the mobile number that's set in your general tab. And then for each status, it doesn't necessarily have the ring time. There's only some statuses that actually have that ring time. Like if you're in a away status, it's gonna without ringing, it's always gonna go to it's always gonna follow your forwarding rules. So, and that's the same with D&D. And then these two bottom forwarding statuses, forwarding profiles, are custom profiles, which you can change the name of for both of these, but you can't change the behavior of them. So like this custom one, this is your custom one forwarding profile, which will always have internal calls ring and external calls will always go to the forwarding destination. And for business trip, this is going to be your custom forwarding profile, your second profile. This is just going to automatically forward for both internal and external. And then I'll also show you the time-based forwarding as well. So for inbound rules, you're going to have in-office routing and outside of office hour routing. Office hours can be set in three spots. You can either set it on the inbound rule itself by just clicking this button here, or you can set it in your settings and then language office hours section under here. This is going to be your default office hours. So if you have office hours set here and then your inbound rules, it's going to follow your inbound rule office hours. And the last thing I'll show you on this is just extension exceptions. So you can only set so many office hours in your forwarding in your inbound rules and in your general office hours in settings the settings office hours section I just showed you. But you can set as many. What we can do if you need more. If you have multiple times in a day where you need multiple different forwards, like 4 forwards or something, 4 different times with 4 different forwards, you can actually create a time-based forwarding extension. So if you, in the forwarding rules section, you can create exceptions. So all this does is is any call that hits this extension will follow these exceptions before it follows anything else. Um, in other words, when a call hits an extension, the exceptions are checked first before any other forwarding rules. Statuses don't matter. If you're in D&D, it doesn't matter. Exceptions will be checked first always. And what we can do here is do something like an asterisk. Asterisk is a catch-all symbol. So this is just saying calls from caller ID, any caller ID. These forwarding rules will apply to any caller ID. So then you can set specific hours here. So if we wanted Monday 8 to, this is going to be our in-office, our normal office hours, let's say. During 8 to 5, we're going to forward to like our extension 100. And if it's outside of those hours, or let's say we have a lunchtime. So let's say specific hours, Monday at 11 till 12. We want to just send that to a voicemail. We can send that to, so this will send to the voicemail of this extension. We can send to, like, if we wanted to send that to extension 101's voicemail, we can do that too here. Make sure we add that asterisk. And then another thing, these exceptions are checked in a top-down priority. So because I added to this first first rule I added, which forwards to extension 100, this calls extension 100 between 8 and 5. And then our lunch break is between 11 and 12. If we had our lunch break exception below this, below our regular office hours, this rule would not matter, it would not do anything. So we got to make sure the order of these rules are configured correctly. So as long as we have this 11 to 12 set to forward to our lunch break destination, and then we have our normal office hours below that, this will work just fine. And then you can add as many of these exceptions as you want. So if you need multiple office hours, that's how we do it there. So I'm just going to cancel out of this, but let's pretend we save that. Then you just want to forward both your destination for calls during office hours and outside of office hours to that time-based forwarding extension, and you'd be good to go. And I think that's it for forwarding. And I think that was everything we went over yesterday. That was for the advanced training here. So I think the next thing we'll do is hot desking. So hot desking requires a pro or enterprise key. What hot desking allows for is shared IP phones. Shared IP phones among extensions, user extensions. So if you have like a call center, for example, and they got like no assigned seating, people come in every day and sit wherever they want, then people can sign in and out of their extension or at whichever IP phone they want. That IP phone has to be set up as a hot desking phone, and that user extension has to be allowed to use hot desking functionality. So I'll show you how to do all that here. So first thing we want to do, if we wanted, let's say, 102 to be our hot desking extension or be allowed to hot desk, we just go to the extension settings, options, and then enable hot desking, which I think I enabled it. It's disabled by default. I think I enabled it during my testing earlier. But so we'll want to enable hot desking, and then just save that. And then we can go to our advanced tab and go to hot desking. And then we can just add a phone here. So hot desking is any hot desking phone needs to be provisioned either with an SBC or locally. You cannot use stun. And right now we don't have an SBC installed, so I'm going to show you that at the same time. Just installing a Windows SBC. It's super quick and easy. Just give me 1 second here to get set up. Okay, so I'm just downloading the Windows-based SBC. Okay, so here it's going to ask us for a provisioning URL and authentication ID. We can grab both of these um, from our 3CX side here. So let's just go to SIP trunks and then add SBC. It looks like I already added one. And we'll just copy the provision URL and authentication ID, which actually should both be correct already because I added this in before. Okay, so we can just save that, install, and that should be up and running, and it is. Okay, so we got our SBC up. Now let's actually provision our hot desking phone. So I actually have a SNOM ready for this, SNOM D785. So we're going to select our SNOM D785, add in the MAC address. You'll want to make sure firmware is updated on that phone as well, updated to the latest supported firmware. I'm actually going to put that. I put that link in our training yesterday, but I'll throw that in our training again today, just in case anyone wasn't here. So this is just a link for all of 3CX supported firmwares. It's a really good link to have. Um, don't go off the manufacturer's firmware. Sometimes 3CX is a firmware or two behind what the manufacturer's latest is. So just always use the 3CX supported firmware. But this one, like I said, this one was already updated, so we should be good to just go ahead and add this. Okay, so here I'm just changing the provisioning method to SBC, and then I'm going to select that demo SBC we just set up. And then we can copy this provisioning URL, save that, and then navigate over to our SNOM, and we're just going to paste in that provisioning URL to the advanced section, and then the update tab, the settings URL is where we want to paste that. Okay, so once this phone comes back up, we should be good to start hot desking. So how hot desking works on the user side is you use a dial code to log in, a dial code and your PIN to log in. So it's very easy. You just use it. By default, this dial code is *77*. We can check that dial code in our dial code section of our settings. So our hot desking dial code here is *77*, followed by the extension number and star again. So if my extension is 101, then we're going to do *77*, 101*, and that'll log us into that extension. It takes like 5 seconds for that phone to register on that extension. And we can change this dial code if you want to. But it looks like our hot desking extension is just about up here. So I think we enabled that on 102. Yeah. Looks like we're good to go. So I'm just going to log into this extension. So *77*, 102*, and then we'll just punch in the pin here. Let's just double check this SNOM here. Okay, some technical difficulties with our SNOM. That's all right, we might have to come back to this. I did actually have this working about 30 minutes back, so I'm not sure why it's not now, but that's all right. I'm just going to restart the phone. We'll move on to the next section, and we'll come back to hot desking. That was pretty much it. Once that phone was online, I guess the only other thing I'll mention while we're here is so the user logs in with that dial code, and by default, every extension will automatically provision with the first BLF key as a logout key. So they don't actually have to use that dial code to log out. They can use that dial code. That dial code would be *77*5*. That'll log them out. But they can just use that BLF and it makes it super easy. But yeah, we'll come back to that in a second here. Hopefully it comes up this time. But we'll move on to our next section. So we did briefly touch on E911 configuration yesterday, but I think we'll do a deeper dive on that today and show some examples. Okay, so E911 is set up under Settings General, under Emergency Numbers. How we'd want to configure this. So this is just about the same as your outbound rule. That's essentially all it is. But it's checking this dialed number. So the number is going to be, if you're in US, it's going to be 911. And then you just want to set your SIP trunk as the outbound route. You don't need to strip or prepend. And then so you'll just want to add a caller ID that has your 911 address registered to that caller ID. So you'd have to talk to your SIP provider, get them to register that number with your address. And then you just set that number here. So then anytime you call this number that you set here, so your emergency number, in this case 911, it's going to go out as this caller ID, which has your address registered to it. And this will work how I'm showing it right now. If you only have one location, only one physical location that uses this PBX. So like if you have one office and all users on this PBX are from that one office, this will work just fine. But what happens if we have multiple physical locations and then multiple addresses? Like we don't want people calling from all offices and showing up as just one single address. So what we can do is create extension groups. So I'm actually just going to save this for now. Call that 911 Office A. And I did show you guys extension groups yesterday, but we're going to we won't go into extension groups. What we're going to do is just create 2 extension groups. We're going to create, actually we had, this one's going to be Office B, and we're going to add, let's say just 102 is from Office B. That's all we need to do. 102 is in Office B, and then we have this group, which is 101 and 102. So let's remove 102, and this is going to be Office A. Okay, so we have our 2 groups with our users attached to those groups that are from each office. So Office A, this is one physical location, and only extension 101 resides at Office A. Then Office B, only extension 102 resides at Office B. So then what we can do is go back to our settings, general, and emergency numbers. And then Office A, we can add the Office A group. So now only calls from users from Office A will go out go out as this caller ID when they call 911, which has their address attached. Then we would need to attach a second address to a second caller ID and create a second emergency role for that. So this is going to be 911 911 Office B, calls to numbers, calls to number 911, and then we'll add Office B. And then select our Telin trunk, and this will be our other number that has Office B's address attached. So now, no matter uh, what user extension you're calling from, you're always going to hit 911 with your address showing for that operator. And that's pretty much it for 911 rules. Let's move on to messaging and SMS. So for today, I'll talk about what you can do with messaging, but we're only going to show SMS messaging today. I'll do a full SMS setup. You can do Facebook messaging. You can integrate Facebook with your 3CX instance. So when anyone messages your company from Facebook, that'll pop up in your 3CX chat. And you can also do website live chat. You can integrate your website's live chat with 3CX, and that'll also show up in the same chat UI in your 3CX web client or 3CX app. But yeah, so we're going to go into SMS today. I'll show a full setup for that. SMS, all messaging does require a Pro or Enterprise key. And you should also be port forwarding your HTTPS port on your firewall. If you have a locally hosted instance. If you're hosted through us, you don't need to worry about that. But okay, let's get into it. So like I mentioned, all chats, whether you're using Facebook, SMS, or your website live chat, will go to your web client. It's going to go to your web client chat section. That'll all show up here. But to actually get this set up, we're going to want to go to our SIP trunk section, and then go to our Telin trunk here, or whichever trunk provider you're using that supports SMS. We'll go to the SMS section. From here, we can enable SMS, but it'll be looking for our account SID and auth token. This is where, if you're hosted through us, you'll grab discount SID and auth token through your one console. If you're hosted with somebody else, you'll have to talk to your provider about getting that information. But for our purposes today, I can just grab this from my side. Okay, and the last thing it's showing us here is a webhook. So this webhook needs to be given to your provider, or if you're hosted through us, you can just attach this to your number on your one console. But this is what you'll move. You're copying these two fields over from your provider, and you're providing your provider with this webhook URL here. They'll attach that to your number, and you should be good to go on that. And once that's done, we do have another issue here. So yesterday, we had set up an inbound rule. This is the number we've configured. This is the number I've configured SMS for, but this is going to an IVR. This is not going to work because text directly to an IVR is going to go nowhere. There's no actual user extensions attached to an IVR, so we have to set up SMS forwarding for that IVR. This is not the case if you send this to a queue or a ring group or a user extension. If you send it to any of those locations, you don't need any further configuration. That'll go to any user extensions in that ring group, call queue, or directly to that user extension. But because we're going to an IVR, we have one extra step. First thing you want to do is make sure a user has system owner rights, which our extension 100 does. And I've already logged into this extension in our web client. So we'll want to navigate to our web client, and then because we have that system owner rights, we have this admin tab down here. If we go to the admin tab, we can open up call handling, and then just find our IVR here, which is our main IVR. And then we can go to the options tab, and we'll have this this option here, forward SMS. and we're just gonna forward that to 100, and we can save that. So now our IVR is forwarding SMS to extension 100, and we should be good to actually start sending some text and start receiving some texts. So let's do a test here. It's just a test number I've set up. So after I've typed in my number, actually I'll go back here because I missed something important. All numbers have to be entered in E164 format, so including the plus and the country code. So +1, we're dialing up, or we're messaging a US number, so we're going to do +1 and then the number. And now after we click Start Chat, it's going to ask us which number we want to use as our caller ID for this outbound SMS, or for our SMS messaging here. We've only configured SMS on this 2100 number, so that's the number I'm going to select. And then we can just send a test. And we get our check mark, so it looks like that went through, and it did. I'll send back a text here. And there we go. So it looks like we got SMS set up correctly. Inbound and outbound is working. So another couple things I'll mention here. When you're sending SMS directly to a queue or ring group where there's multiple extensions that are going to receive that SMS, how that works is when a user responds to that SMS, they're gonna take ownership of that chat. So any future texts that are received from that number are going to go to the user who last responded. They're no longer going to go to all the users that are attached to that ring group or call queue. If you want them to start going to those users again, you have to close the chat or mark it as dealt with. So just click the check mark here, and now any future messages will go back to that all users in that ring group or call queue. And that's the same for outbound messaging. So what I often see uh, people having issues with is someone responds to a message and they take ownership of that chat, and then another user tries to send an outbound SMS to that same number, and they'll get an error saying like another user has a chat already opened with this number. But that's common. So it just means that that original user who had that chat with that person did not mark that chat as dealt with, and no one else can message that person until that is marked as dealt with. Just make sure there's nothing I missed here. I think we're good to move on to our next section here. I was going to go back to our hot desking phone, but it looks like we're still having issues with that, so maybe we'll have to come back to that at the end. Okay, so for our next section here, we have a bridging. So what bridging allows for is two separate 3CX instances to be bridged together, so you can see things like presence. So presence of extensions. You can see like extension statuses uh, um, across PBXs, and you can also call across the PBXs as well. You can make outbound calls across PBX. You can make extension to extension calls across that bridge. And yeah, so let's actually let's get this set up here. Looks like I did some testing earlier, and it looks like I already got this set up. So let's actually just delete this, and we're going to start this over. I already have the slave bridge set up on my other instance. So we're just going to set up the master. It's the exact same thing on both the slave and master. There's no differences to the configuration. So um, yeah, we only really need to see one side here. So what I'm going to do here is click Add Bridge and Add Master. We're just going to call this, we'll call this our master bridge. So an important thing to note is this virtual extension number. This has to match on both the master and slave side. So I have this currently set to 10,005 on my slave side. So that's what I'm going to set it to on the master side. Has to match, or the registration will fail for this bridge. Outbound rule prefix. This is just a prefix for when you're dialing across the bridge. We're going to set this to 3 here. One thing to note is if you plan, if you know you're going to do bridging in advance, you don't actually need a prefix. What you can do is, say you have like 3-digit length extensions. You'd want the same digit length on both, and then you'd want to use, let's say you have the 3-digit length extension length on both. What you could do is set your one PBX to only use 100, like any 100 extensions. So all user extensions, queues, IVRs, whatever, use 1 to 199. And then you could set your second PBX to use 200 to 299. And if you have another PBX, you can do 300 to 399, and so on as much as you want. Because there's no overlapping extensions, you don't actually need that prefix. You can just set up your outbound rule to. I'll show you the outbound rule section after, but yeah, for now, this prefix is only if you have overlapping extensions, which we do. In this scenario, there is overlapping extensions. There's extension 100 and 101 and 102 on both these PBXs we're bridging. So for this, we'll use that prefix 3. The sim calls, this is maximum simultaneous calls across the bridge. So set this to whatever you want. This will affect the sim call license limit on both 3CX instances as well, any calls across the bridges. So just keep that in mind. We'll just keep that as 10 for today. Authentication, so this has to be the same. You're going to copy this password over from your master bridge to your slave bridge. It's auto-generated on your master bridge, but I actually have a password already set on the slave bridge, so I'm just going to copy it over from the slave bridge for this one. And then for this, we are going to use the tunnel connection for today. We'll just paste in the IP of the other PBX, and then the tunnel port, which by default is 5090. And that's good for us for today. So here you can select which presence you want to send and receive information to. So we can actually add our extension groups. I think our default extension group has all extensions in it, so we can just add that in there. So this is going to send presence information to that remote PBX. And it'll only send presence information for the extensions that are part of the default group, or whichever group you attach here. And then if you want to receive presence information, you just have to add in, you can add in the FQDN or IP, and then the HTTPS port, which is 443 for this PBX we're connecting to. And then here you can select which users can see this remote presence. So let's actually do extension 100 because we're signed in there. And then, yeah, we can just save that. So I'm just going to refresh registration to force a registration here. Oh, actually, I have to give me 1 second here. Let me just log into the other instance that we're connecting to, and I'll see what the holdup here is. Okay, it looks like it just took a second, but looks like we're online. Okay, so our bridge is online, And we should be good to go. So the last thing we'll actually have to set up here is an outbound rule. So you do need an outbound rule to call across the bridge. It's very easy to set up. So all we're going to do is, because we made our prefix 3, we're going to go outbound rules. We're going to create a bridge rule. And we'll say calls to numbers with prefix 3. And because our extension length is 3 plus the prefix, we can actually just say to calls to numbers with length of 4, the prefix plus the extension length. And then we can select our route 1 to go across our bridge there. And then we can also just strip off that prepended 3. And then that's actually all we need here. We should actually be able to call across that bridge. Let me give it a try now. So I'm just going off that Yealink we had provisioned yesterday. We can actually watch this interactive call section. Okay, and there we go. We're currently on an active call with extension 102 on the other end of the bridge. And that's pretty much it for bridging. So we set up our outbound rule, set up our bridges, set up presence. Oh, I guess that's one last thing I'll show you is just presence. So we should actually be able to see presence information if I log back into this. It looks like there's an issue with presence. Oh, I think I know what that issue is. Give me 1 second here. Okay, let's try logging out, logging back in once more, and we should hopefully see that this time. No, my apologies. It looks like we are good. Okay, so we're looking at the other side of the bridge here, and we're seeing the presence of 102. Looks like we're good to go there. So I just had to change the group we were looking at there. Yeah, that's a 3102. That's my extension on the far side. Okay. So I think we'll move on from here. Next thing we're going to look at is security and anti-fraud. So your PBX will often get attacked. There's some different kinds of attacks that are going to occur on your PBX or can occur on your PBX. The most common is just brute force attacks, which will generally target the PBX, where an attacker will try to guess the extension credentials. So that's the extension number, the SIP username, and authentication password for an extension. So that's this information right here, ID, password, and the name. There's also denial of service attacks. This will prevent you from using your PBX system either through flooding you with calls, so using up your license limit and not allowing you to make any more outbound calls or receive inbound calls, or they can also flood the server itself with packets, um, using up server resources to the point where your server doesn't have enough resources to perform its normal functions like running 3CX. There's also things like dictionary attacks, where people will attempt to use like default passwords or simple word passwords to gain access to your system. So why would people want to? Why would anyone want to attack your system to begin with? A lot of the times, because they can gain access. If they gain access to an extension, let's say, they can make calls to providers that'll charge a bunch of money, so they can resell calling to that provider, um, and profit off of racking up these charges on your account. So what kind of prevention do you have? So we're going to talk about 3CX prevention with 3CX application specifically, but just some general protection you can do. Physical security for your premises, wherever 3CX is hosted, the actual physical machine. Just only give access to people who need access. Make sure it's in a secure area. Um, Make sure you have good network security. So only open ports in your firewall that you need open. Disable WAN access if you don't need it. For device security, make sure that passwords on your switches are changed from your defaults. Lock any screens of any admin PCs when you walk away from them. Make sure all your operating system security is fully up to date. So all security updates security updates and patches are pushed and applied. And then make sure you're then I think that's it. So let's move on to some 3CX security then. Make sure all your passwords for extensions, your admin account are secure. So for any extensions and the administrator account, you should have at least a 21, the best practice is 21 length alphanumeric and with symbols in there, a totally randomized password. And then only give access to your admin account or any extensions that are absolutely needed to people who absolutely need it. And then also make sure your backups are encrypted. Backups are super easy to get the admin passwords off of. Yesterday, I typed in or I pasted my password wrong for this demo 3CX instance. So I could not log in. It took me about 3 minutes to get that admin password because I forced a backup on the back end. I had access to the Linux side, of course, which would not be as easy for an attacker. But if they can get access to a backup, if someone can get access to a backup, it's very easy to get that admin password off there. So encrypt your backups. So I did mention 21 character random password, a combination of letters, numbers, and symbols. Make sure, so extension security. Let's talk about extension security. So by default, for someone to gain access to an extension, they would need this ID, the password, and your user name up here. By default, these are both a length of 10, and they're a combination of uppercase, lowercase letters, and numbers. You can change this to be up to 50 characters long. So if you want to secure your extensions even more, you can change that to whatever you want there, up to 50 in length. Make sure you disable any unused extensions. So what you can do, let's go to the options tab here. If you have an open extension that you have sitting there waiting for a new hire or something like that, disable the extension until they need it. You can disable that entirely. You can also disable external calls on an extension if they only need to make an internal calls or whatever. You can also enable pin protect. So what pin protect does is forces you to use your voicemail pin anytime you're going to make an outbound call. And then speaking about voicemail pin, actually, so voicemail pin by default is 4 digits long. This can be up to 10. So you can increase security on your PIN number as well. Also, so yesterday this has this disabled right now. This has block remote phones using stun disabled right now. By default, this is enabled. This was just disabled when we provisioned a phone to this extension yesterday. But if you don't need a stun phone, if you don't need a stun phone provision to that extension, just go ahead and disable that. You can also block any tunnel connections, so 3CX app and SBC connections. If you don't need apps and you don't need an SBC, you can disable that too. So another setting I'll show you here, if we go to settings in general, we have automatically disable outbound calls on all ports outside of office hours. So it does exactly what it says it does. Outside of office hours, when you set your office hours for your general office hours, anything outside of that, all outbound calls will fail. The use case I've heard, actually I've heard Josh mention one before in our previous training, is cleaners. Sometimes cleaners will make like long distance calls when nobody's in the office. Josh mentioned a story about where a cleaner had racked up like thousands of dollars in long distance calls and took them months to figure out what was going on there. But if you want to prevent anything like that, if you don't need calls outside of office hours, you can just disable that for all extensions here. One thing I will mention, if you disable outbound, if you enable this setting to disable outbound calls outside of office hours, or if you disable outbound calls um, with by any means, like one of the settings I just showed you in the user extension options, calls to emergency numbers will still be available, allowed. So you don't need to worry about that. So another thing we'll talk about is country codes. I did mention this in the setup briefly yesterday, but under security allowed country codes, we can disable and enable any country codes from being called. Uh, it's it's absolutely best to disable as many as you possibly can get away with. Only enable the countries you need enabled. Um, that's an important one. So another thing we can set up for phones, which I was actually going to go over earlier, but we can set up secure SIP and secure RTP. This just encrypts both the SIP traffic and RTP traffic for your phones or for your 3CX apps. We're not going to go into the IP phones because it requires manual configuration and like uploading certs to the phone. But I can quickly show you secure SIP. First thing you want to make sure, however you're configuring, whatever device you're configuring secure SIP for, just make sure secure SIP is enabled under security, secure SIP. And then this is the certificate you'd upload to your phone, which you do not need to do for 3CX app. For 3CX app, it's super easy. All you do, go to an extension, go to phone provisioning, make sure you have the 3CX app selected, and then you can just change the SIP transport to TLS and RTP transport, RTP mode to only secure. That's secure SIP, that's SRTP. And we got that enabled for that app. The only other thing you have to do is restart that app. Just restart the application and you're good to go. But that'll just encrypt the traffic in SIP and RTP traffic, whichever you want, using TLS. Let's continue on here. So let's go look at security and anti-hacking. So the automatic global 3CX blacklist here, this will collect any blacklists that your instance blacklists itself and it'll send those IPs to 3CX for analysis. Then 3CX will also send you, in return for that, 3CX will also send you their global blacklist. So it's a list of blacklisted IPs that 3CX has analyzed and determined are nefarious IPs. They'll share that blacklist with you if you agree to send your IP blacklist to them. And so you can just enable that here. So failed the failed authentication protection defines how many failed requests the PBX will accept from a particular IP before it places that in your blacklist. So by default, this is set to 5. Failed challenge requests. This right here. So when a host tries to register to your PBX, the PBX will send a challenge that needs to be responded to. For a bogus host, they won't respond to these challenges, and instead will try to flood your PBX with requests. The PBX will ignore any of these bogus register attempts from that particular IP if it exceeds this value. So by default, that's 1,000. The blacklist time interval. This just defines how when any IP is automatically blacklisted. This defines how long it stays in your blacklist for. And by default, this is 8,600, 400 seconds. So we're going to talk about the security barrier green, amber, and red together here. So when the PBX detects a packet coming from any particular IP address, it will start taking a sampling for the duration of whatever we have the green barrier set to. So this is 200. That's 200 milliseconds. So anytime there's any packet from an IP, it's going to start this. It's going to start this sampling duration in milliseconds. So 200 milliseconds. And depending on the number of packets that are received within this sampling period, so within these 200 milliseconds, it's either going to do one of two actions. If the amount of packets exceeds our amber barrier, which by default is 2,000 packets, the PBX will block this IP for 5 seconds. But if it exceeds our red barrier, it's going to just add this IP to our IP blacklist. Live chat requests. So this is the maximum amount of requests the PBX will allow from a certain IP for this duration. So within a 2-second duration, PBX only allows 20 live chat requests by default. This SSL secure SIP transfer to ciphers, this will leave only TLS 1.2 enabled, and this could prevent old legacy phones and 3CX apps from connecting remotely. This enabled provisioning secret key, what this does is normally any phones on your 3CX system will have a shared provision URL. They're not non-unique provision URL. This just allows for unique provisioning URLs per phone. So for every phone, each phone will have their own unique provision URL. Okay, so actually let's go take a look at email alerts now. I did kind of touch on this section at the very start here, but I'm just gonna take a look at some of these options here. So these are this is the email address that any email alerts that we define down here will be sent to. Like I said before, these can be comma separated, so you can add multiple email addresses. So we can send an email alert when any of the following events occurs. When someone dials an emergency number, when the status of a trunk or SBC changes, a trunk failover occurs, a trunk provider responds to request with an error code, your 3CX license limit is reached, so that's your max SIM call limit. When an IP is blacklisted, when requests are rejected by the anti-hacking module because of a security breach, network failures, stun resolution failures, hard disk at or near its capacity, call to a block country, login. You can do for just logins to the 3CX management console. When a user extension is added, when services are stopped or fail, when new updates are available, when scheduled backups are created successfully. So there's a lot of great ones in here. I recommend kind of going through this, enabling some of these. Some of these might be a bit of a pain, like like if I saw one there, but it doesn't matter. But yeah, go take a look at that. There's some great notifications to have there that are super helpful. Okay, so the next thing we're kind of moving on to some of our troubleshooting steps here. Um, so to start things off, let's go take a look in our event log. So if we go to dashboard here and go to events, so we can see a number of logs here. So the event log is just a summary of events like registrations for extensions and SIP providers, and also failed registrations. There's three different kinds of events here, which are warnings, errors, and informational. Requests uh, requests to like RPS servers, successful RPS requests are logged as like informational packets, for example, or warning packets if they're unsuccessful, or things like blacklisted IPs are logged here as errors. And we can actually um, sort this by any one of those criteria. Looks like we have no errors, but we have some informational and some warning packets here. Um, but that's our event log. Pretty straightforward. If you just want like a quick glance at some uh, general information on your 3CX, this is the place to go. A more detailed similar section, like the event log, is the activity log. So that's just over here. If we go to the activity log, this is just going to show us more detailed information. We can also set things like logging level. So by default, you're going to be on low logging level. We can bump this up to verbose if we're doing some troubleshooting. I would turn this down back to low if there's no current issues going on, just because this is CPU intensive. Um, but we don't actually need to change the logging level for today. But we can just take a look. So it's just going to show you more detailed information on like registration requests, failed registrations, things like that. Like for example here, this is a failed registration, and it's because our credentials don't match here. And yeah, that looks like a phone. Um, okay, so next up, we're going to take a quick look at packet captures. We're not going to go into too much detail, but we'll take a couple packet captures here. I'll kind of give you guys a little brief overview. Um, yeah. Okay. So for a packet capture, we're actually in the correct section already in the activity log. Just right here, we can start our capture. This kind of drop down list right here is just going to allow you to select which interface you want to run that network capture on. We're going to change this to all interfaces. And then what we can actually do, just to show you guys an example, um, so we're going to go on our Yay link here, and this is probably timed out. Yeah. So we're going to log back in. We're going to log back in, and then we're going to actually just let's break our register name. So this is part of our authentication information. So we're going to break this register name. I've actually whitelisted our IP. If you normally, if I guess one thing I'll mention, this phone is provisioned on stun. So the PBX is only going to be, since it's cloud PBX and we're provisioned via stun, it's only going to see our public IP. So before, when I was testing, this actually blacklisted my public IP, so I couldn't get access to the management console, which is fine. All I did was just VPN to a new IP, and then I was able to log in. But I did whitelist my IP now, so that shouldn't be a problem. But just keep in mind that like failed registers on a stun provision phone can blacklist your entire network. Um, if it's a local phone, it's just going to blacklist that local IP, of course. So you wouldn't have to worry about wouldn't have to worry about that as much. Okay, so I disabled this extension, broke the register name. Let's actually go start a capture now. So dashboard activity log, change that to all interfaces, start the capture, and then we can re-enable this extension. It's going to try registering. It's going to fail. Register failed. And then we can actually just stop this capture. And so once you stop that capture, this is the only place you can download this capture from. So just make sure you click here because you can't find it anywhere else on the management console. That once you move out of this screen, it's lost. Okay, so I have my dump down here, and this is our capture. So you do need Wireshark to view these dump files, which I already had installed. But now let's just take kind of a quick look through Wireshark and see if we can find this capture. So starting things off, it might look a little overwhelming because we got, like I had that capture running for a very short amount of time. That was like 20 seconds. And this is like a completely unused PBX, basically. And we captured 500 packets. You can see down here. Full screen this too. Okay, so how do we go through 500 packets and find or more than that on most captures? How do we find what we're looking for here? So we have some filtering options. I'm gonna paste these in chat. Some like common filtering options I have that might help you. So for example, we can do zip contact user equals quote extension number. So this is just going to filter by any packets that have to do with a specific extension number. So it must be 101. Yes, this appears to be it. So this is going to it's actually not going to show us everything we need, I don't think. Hold on 1 second here. Just make sure I have the right extension. That is 101. Good. Okay. Actually, a better way to do this is by IP. Sorry, bear with me 1 quick second here. Okay, so we can see our registration request coming from the phone here. We don't actually see this failure, so we actually should see a failure here. Let me just change my filtering. I have a better way of doing this, I think. Okay, there we go. So I just filtered that by the branch number, which is just unique for communication, but that has to do with this registration request. This is going to be like one leg of communication. But this is going to show us both the initial registration request and then the response. So proxy authentication required. This is actually, we should still be seeing a failure notice. Let's narrow this down a little bit more. let's just do set method register. Okay, you know what? We can actually just check this on the phone side. That's all right. This is going to be easier to show on the phone side anyway. Okay, so we're going to take one more capture here. I'll show you how to take a capture in a Yealink. Let's go to settings, and then actually I think it's under network. It's configuration. Okay, so PCAP. Want to take an enhanced PCAP, and then we're just going to repeat the process here. So I'm going to start a capture. That's going to stay running. I'm just going to go re-register this extension. I'm going to disable that, enable that, go back to settings, configuration, stop that capture. Oh, it did actually stop there. It didn't like us disabling that. So it should actually try to re-register in just a second here if we leave this going for. That failed for some reason. All right, we're going to make do with this capture. Okay, so we can see registration requests. We can see this registration request, and then we should have seen our failure, but that's all right. There would normally be just a failed registration. It'll just say failed for authentication data. It's just going to say our authentication data is wrong. But what we'll do instead is just show you a packet capture of a call. So we can get everything in here. It should be more straightforward. So I do have extensions already set up. I have my Yealink. I'm just gonna, no, I don't, because I broke that register name. So let's just fix that quickly. Okay, so that's good. That's registered. So we can now make calls off of that Yealink right now. So if I do all interfaces, start that capture, I'm going to quickly make a call off this extension. Just so you know, if you're making a capture of a call, you'll want to start the network capture before the call begins, and don't end the capture until the call is completed entirely. It's not going to give you a proper PCAP data for that call if you don't follow those steps. Okay. So I just broke my outbound rules when I was doing some testing this morning. The call wasn't going through, but that's all right. We'll just reactivate those, and we should be good to go. Okay, so starting our capture, I'm going to send the call now. So that didn't actually go through, and I'm not sure why now. So actually, let's take a look at this capture and see if we can figure it out. Hopefully the traffic is actually hitting the 3CX instance. So what I'll do here, for any phone calls, if you're trying to break down a phone call, the easiest place to go is telephony and then VoIP calls. This will show you any VoIP calls that were captured during the time that capture was running. And it looks like that traffic did hit the PBX, which is good. So this The state we can see here is rejected. Call from extension 101, which is the extension I called off of, and call to this number, which is the number I called. What we could do now is prepare a filter. This will filter all traffic that was related to this phone call. So now if we look in the background here, we got a 480 temporarily unavailable.
Yeah, highlight both legs when you prepare that filter.
No, is there invalid caller ID? So it looks like we're currently our caller ID is going out as our main trunk number. That's fine. This won't matter for you for the most part, but I think
Chris, just define a outbound caller ID with E164. It's using the authentication number because there's no caller ID set.
oh yeah, because I did change that trunk out actually this morning. Okay, let me just grab a caller ID here. We'll re-add that to our default caller ID section. Okay, so now we should be able to take a capture and actually get a real call on that capture. So we're going to start the capture, send the call. I just answered that call, and then I'm going to hang up. Okay, so we got a completed call on this capture. Let's stop that, download the capture, open that capture up. We're going to go to telephony, VoIP calls, pop this open. So here's our call here. Here's both legs of our call. You can prepare that filter and see all traffic that relates to this call. This is still going to be a lot of traffic. Like I was on that call for about 2 seconds before I hung up, but that this RTP traffic it's gonna make that capture pretty messy. So what we can do is actually further break down this call. If we go back to the telephony section, you can select both legs of the call and hit the flow sequence button. This is going to give us like a graphic of it's going to be easily broken down graphic for both of our call legs here. So it's going to show us all information that pertains to this call. So our invite, we can see that the PBX requested an invite, sent an invite to 10.100.105, which is a local IP of the PBX. It looks like this is formatted very weird here. But we can see a breakdown of calls. So proxy authentication required is sent, the acknowledgement back is sent, the invite to the call is sent, trying, which indicates the phone is ringing, the outside number is ringing, and then an invite. This is indicating the invite is sent. The call is trying. It looks like this is a little out of order, but this should actually be in the same area as this. But we can see that call is ringing, and then we can see session progress. So this is just where the RTP traffic begins. We can actually still see ringing here. So like I said, it looks like it's a little out of order, but then we can see RTP traffic. And then continuing RTP traffic. This is just the talking on the phone. That's like 2 seconds I was on there. And it looks like at this point, the call is hung up. So a buy is sent. We see that's actually from, this is going to be from the SIP trunk because I hung up on the external number. So that buy is sent to the PBX IP receives this buy, and the call is hung up. And then the PBX acknowledges it received that buy. But that's a breakdown of that call. We can take a look at, let me just see here. Let's go take a look at the invite. Okay, so the invite. So this is the, sorry. So this is the original SIP invite that was sent when the call was sent from my IP phone. So this is what's sent to the PBX, which is then sent to the SIP provider to indicate that somebody wants to call. You can actually break down this invite a little bit here to make it a little more sense. So if we go under session, if we go under the SIP session or SIP section, we can see a number of headers here. Uh, these are what are called headers. So there's a via header, from header, to header, so on. And then each of these means something important. So for example, the from header, this just indicates where the call came from, or where this invite came from. So we can see it's from extension 101 at the FQDN of our demo PBX here. We can see where this is being sent to. This is being sent to this is being sent to the FQDN. This is being sent to the FQDN. It's going to go out to the SIP trunk after this, but because it's an outside number, but it's being sent to this number at the PBX's IP, which will then be sent to the SIP trunk, and then further down the line, it's going to reach the number I called. So the via header. This via header at the top here, I didn't go over. So every time this SIP packet hits an intermediate SIP point, so like a SIP trunk or the PBX, that SIP point will add on its own address to the via header. So what this means is once the invite reaches its destination, so the number I called, once it reaches that phone, it's going to have a long string of of addresses in the via header. This will indicate. This will give a return path back to my IP phone. So we can trace. So it allows you to trace a path through every SIP point that packet went through from my IP phone to the phone that I called, that external phone. So it allows any responding SIP messages to follow that return path. We can talk about so the CSEC, or the command sequence header. This will actually link packets within a call leg together. So any responses to a message, so like an invite, any direct responses to that message will have the same CSEC number. And so let's talk about user agent. This is just going to indicate which user sent this. It's going to give the MAC address and the phone if this was coming from your side of the PBX. If it's an outbound call. So right now we can see that this was sent from my Yealink, and it gives me the this is actually the firmware, and then it gives you the MAC address of that. Let's see what else I can show you here. So call ID header, this is just a call, this just identifies the call leg. So we can actually filter by this and see any packets that relate to this call leg, which we're already doing. But yeah, that's just I kind of wanted to show you guys a more basic breakdown of Wireshark, and I think that's pretty much all we're going to show for today on the on a packet capture. And I think we're actually just about done here. The very last thing I was going to show you is the audit log, which is one of my favorite tools that was just added in V18. So we go to dashboard and then audit log right here. We can actually see any changes that are made on the 3CX system. It'll show the previous values and the current values. So it'll show which setting was changed, what it was changed from, and what it's currently set as. Let me give you an example here. So we made that default caller ID change on our SIP trunk. So oh, I should also mention, so it'll actually show the IP of the person who made that change. It'll show which user they were logged in as. It'll show the date and time as well here. So here it'll show which section. So this is our SIP trunk default caller ID change. So section, SIP trunks, type of change is an update, and we can see outbound caller ID. So the previous value this was set to, outbound caller ID was set to nothing. The updated value, so what it's currently set to, is that number I put in there. But that's a super useful tool to have. I've seen lots of cases. This has come in handy more times than I can count, and V18 hasn't actually even been out that long. It's very, very useful. If you're not sure who's making changes, if there's some weirdness happening in your PBX, and you're trying to figure out who changed what or who shut down services or whatever it may be, you can come to the audit log and check that here. You can also filter this. There's some filtering options here as well that will make it easier. So if we wanted to like filter by SIP trunks, like if we wanted to find that SIP trunk change and it was buried somewhere, we can just filter that here. But then you can also filter by some other options here, like the what item was changed exactly, or which user made that change. And then you can also purge your audit log however often you want in months. And I think that was pretty much it for today. I think that's everything we're gonna go over. I don't think I think so. We got about half an hour here. We still got lots of time. We can hang around, and if you guys have any questions, go ahead and ask those now.
Sure. So anyone has any questions, you can use chat. If you want to look at something a little bit more in depth, as a matter of fact, actually, why don't Chris? Why don't you show caller ID reformatting if you haven't?
Yes, I can show caller ID formatting. Might be actually easier to. So caller ID reformatting is done under SIP trunks, your SIP trunk, and then the caller ID section. So you can reformat any caller ID using a source pattern, and then so let's do an example here. So we add a source pattern. Just pull up my example here.
This is a very important part just for everybody. You definitely want to pay attention to this and check it out a little bit in depth. If you are planning on taking intermediate advanced tests here shortly, there is going to be probably a few questions on source pattern, replace pattern, what will be the result, and also multiple choice of how to get that result. And that multiple choice could be multiple answers. So this is just an important part. Chris, one thing in the chat was a really good question. Is the purge audit log? If you want to jump to that real quick, just because that's quick. If you purge the audit log manually and go back into the audit log, does it show that you just purged the audit log?
I don't believe it does. I don't actually think you can purge the audit log manually. I've never done that before.
Okay. No. Set the audit log purge and see if it sets an audit that it was changed. I'll change it to like 3 months or something, or turn it off, or turn it on to see if it records that action. I'm not sure it will, but that was a good question.
Yes.
Looks like it records the action of changing it. So yes.
Records the action of changing it. Did it record audit log disable? Yeah, so it did. It recorded both. Yep. It'll record if you disable it or if you change the purge frequency. Okay, so let's go back to caller ID reformatting. So caller ID. So essentially, if you want to change a caller ID, so if users see a different caller ID than what the source caller ID was, you do that here. So you'd have to add a source pattern. So this will match to any caller. This is what will kind of grab any caller ID that comes in. It'll match to this source pattern. So it has to match the source pattern. So if our numbers are coming in E164 format, What we can do here is just do +1, +1, and then any. Actually, we need a period here. Okay, so what am I doing here? So +1. So this is just saying match to any numbers that have any caller IDs that come in with a +1. And then the brackets, these open and closed brackets, are setting a variable. The variable I'm saying is any number. So we're saying any number that comes in as +1 with the variable any other number. So we're saying +1 followed by any set of numbers will match to this source pattern. And let's say we want to remove the +1. So all we have to do for this is pretty easy. We can just say keep source pattern 1. Keep our first source pattern. So if we had multiple source patterns here, it doesn't matter what we have here, but let's say we have multiple source patterns. This \1 \2, this \1 is going to match to this first variable. \2, this is matching to our second variable. So you can create multiple variables and match however you want, and then you can choose what to replace that with. So if we're just trying to remove that +1, I can just say match to numbers with +1 followed by whatever set of numbers, and then keep just those whatever set of numbers. Keep everything else but the +1. I mean, if this makes it a little more clear, if I did this, this would do absolutely nothing. It's going to say match to any number starting with a +1 and replace it with +1 plus that first variable. Um, um, okay, does that kind of make sense to everyone?
The big reason for this is in scenarios where you may, have international calls coming in with international tagging, but maybe you got an inbound call coming in through an international SIP trunk, but it's cheaper for you to make calls via PSTN locally, and you need and they take local numbers. So you can take that +1 off. You can change the area code. You can remove the area code. It's more or less for how the user interacts with the caller ID when it comes in. So it displays on their phone the way that they would hit redial. That's the big reason for the reformatting. It's just the display of it so the user can hit redial and go out the source trunk that you want them to go out based on how the number is dialed. That is not a comma before the asterisk, that's a period. So that's essentially, this is just regular expression. So dots are a placeholder for a single any symbol.
Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, so let's open up the Q&A. If you have a question and you want to chat it, go ahead. If you want to use your microphone and talk, just raise your hand and I'll unmute you. Yeah, good question, John. Can you show them the 3CX high availability, the enterprise high availability, Chris?
Yep.
And kind of, I mean, it depends on what you're doing with that source pattern. You don't have to have reformatting. If you want the numbers just to come in the way they are, you can just let them come in. If you're trying to just get rid of that plus, what I would do is plus and then in brackets dot star and then just do a /1. You don't need to define unless you're trying to do something different with the one or the first three numbers. You don't need to define multiple variables. You can just use one variable.
I'll show you guys the HA setup here. I'll do a quick overview of that. So HA setup, it does require a Pro or Enterprise key. The Enterprise version is going to have a much quicker failover time. I think it's about 2 minutes, and I think the Pro key is about 4 hours. So it's a pretty big difference. So to set up failover, you want to go to the failover section. You can enable failover here. It's very easy on the active server. You just select it as the active server, and then save that. Super easy. That's it. And then, oh, sorry, and you'd also want to set up backup scheduling. So you'd want to set up your backups to go to a shared location, like a Google Drive, for example. And then, so that way your failover instance can regularly restore based on the most up-to-date configuration for your primary instance. So on our active server, we're going to set up a restore schedule, enable a restore schedule. We can do that daily, let's say at 11 p.m. And then we can save that. That's it. So every day at 11 p.m., that's going to restore. We're going to pretend that's going to a Google Drive, a shared Google Drive between the failover or the primary and the secondary. And then on our secondary instance, we're also going to enable failover, but this time we'll set it as a passive server. We'll punch in the IP of our active server, and then we're going to select which services we want to monitor. So our passive server will monitor whichever services we select here. So let's say we want to monitor just the SIP server. The SIP server goes down, the passive server is going to become active. And then we can also select the time interval between these tests. We can also select whether we want it to check if all these tests fail, or if just we want just one to fail before the passive server takes over. You can also use failover scripts if you want, which can decrease the time for that failover if you're using like custom FQDNs and certs and internal DNS, but some more complicated setup. Okay, so let's pretend we've thrown this into passive mode. That we're on our secondary server. We throw it in passive mode. We're monitoring whichever services we want, and then we enable that. As soon as we enable this, this is going to disable most services. It's going to essentially put the passive server into like a sleep state, where it's just monitoring that primary instance. And then once it sees that goes down, it's going to bring up every service, and your phones will then register on the secondary instance, and you'll be back up and running. Of course, one thing you'll have to do additionally is set up the restore for your secondary instance. So we set the backup schedule to be every day at 11 p.m. For our primary instance. So for our secondary instance, we're going to do every day at 12 a.m. or 1 a.m., whatever, just enough time for that backup to run. And then we'd also, on a passive server, we also want to make sure do not start services after restore is selected, or it's going to bring that secondary server online overnight, and that's not what we want. You can also enable if you're going to use a encrypted backup, you can just paste in the password here, which is a great idea.
All right, so I'm going to hit a few of these questions top down. Yes, you could do inbound, outbound call ID reformatting, Jeremy. Jeff, any situation where an SBC is being used, it should be on dedicated hardware. The SBC should be treated like a phone system. It should not be on a shared host of any kind. Eric, the Pro and Enterprise have two different timers. Enterprise is a 5-minute TTL, where the Pro is a 6-hour, so 5-minute versus 6 hours. There's no way to trigger trigger it to be differently. John, active and passive servers need to be Pro Enterprise license. So the key is actually shared. So on Pro, it's active passive. On Enterprise, it's active active. So the key is shared. on both servers. You don't need to buy 2 keys. Let's see, Richard, can we do a restore from the active server to the passive server as an initial setup for the passive server? Yes, that you can do that, Richard, and that is probably the way you should do that. Yes, Ken, you can run an SBC on a virtual machine. That's fine. Rule of thumb on the SBC is to configure it with the same resource as the PBX. If the PBX is needing the resource because of the call volume, the SBC is also going to need that same resource. And then Marty, can you give me a little bit more details on a totally hosted solution? What do you mean by that? And let's see, Richard, then just tweak stuff like the IP address of the passive and such. Can we do a restore to the active server? Yeah, so Richard, you don't have to tweak that. You just take a backup that excludes the DNS or network value. So you just take that backup and move it over during your setup phase, and then you set your backup restore. You shouldn't need to tweak anything. Once you do the initial install of the server knows its host information. So you just configure the backup restore process and push it. You can just do a live push. You don't have to let the automated push go. You can just go to your backup restore, go to the location, grab it, and restore. Fully cloud-based. So Marty, yes, if you want to reach out to sales@telin.com, Telin is a distributor and solutions architect for 3CX. We do have a fully cloud solution with a value-added service. So we're a VAD, value-added distributor, with a partner success program. There's a lot of benefits to working with Telin if you want to reach out. Sorry, guys, I kind of flew through those questions pretty quick. All right, Ken's got another one. Is there any way to get a better sound quality on conference and/or video calls? Most customers are have a minimum of 300 down and a minimum of 10 up or more, just not seeing decent quality. This sounds good to hear, though. So, Ken, not sure why you're not getting good quality. I think that's going to be more of a troubleshooting session than anything. Your quality should be no less than toll quality. G711U is a toll quality codec, so you should not be experiencing any less than toll quality. You can go with higher codecs, but you shouldn't be receiving anything less than that. Richard, that's kind of a loaded question, bud. There's nothing that I know of. No known issues with update 6 that I would comment on that is considered a bug or a repetitive issue. The what's up, John, is I think you're in the same boat as us. We're just kind of following the updates. Unfortunately, 3CX shares with us, even as a distributor, the same information they share with you. We do not get any advanced notice of anything. Kevin, yes, you can have a active setup with enterprise with different FQDNs. The IPs do not matter. They do not have to be a shared IP. But if you're looking for like a total active, the phones are registered to both at the same time, it's doing an immediate failover, it is possible to do that setup. You would not accomplish that utilizing the configuration via 3CX itself, but there is a way of going about getting a full active. Yes, Ken. So our instance is only required for the 3CX startup and hosted. They did make a requirement of our instance because they are doing support of those servers. The our instance helps them identify issues of trunk registration and automation of tickets, so they know who and when they have an issue. It doesn't affect the ability for you to use FlowRoute on your hosted or your on-prem, your own hosted or on-prem. Same with Telin, you can utilize this across the board. But for 3CX startup and for 3CX hosted, that is correct. Our instance is required. Well, Kendall, stun does suck. Yeah, you're right. I don't recommend stun anytime. SBCs are a viable option. Telin takes a different route. We use a little bit more of a robust technology. Our hosting solution allows you to IPsec directly to your cloud infrastructure, or even do a VMPLS setup to our infrastructure. Essentially, the VMPLS setup, you can have either a DMARC device at your customer's site, or replace your customer's router with our brand router that we work with our vendor, and they could have multi-carrier uplinks, being physical line or 4G LTE 5G, which would allow for WAN smoothing, bandwidth aggregation, and stateful transfer. So essentially, back to the data center, if ISP1 goes down, ISP2 can take over, or a 4G, 5G can take over, and your customer wouldn't drop a call. They wouldn't even know it happened. They would maintain their call and have no and be none the wiser of it. For quality, you don't require the SBC for quality. The SBC is great. As I mentioned yesterday, it does relieve a lot of NAT related issues and ISP filtering, or even ISP quality of service, or traffic bottlenecking, because some ISPs do watch for SIP and VoIP traffic, or RTP, and they do throttle or filter, because the ISPs at the end of the day are selling their own SIP service. That's what home phone service is with them. So the SBC has a very light, I think it's MD5 encryption to hide that traffic. Ben, I mean, that's kind of, again, another loaded question. You know, the SBC is a good alternative. I just prefer a more traditional and robust solution, such as IPsec or VMPLS. MPLS has been a market leader for many years when it comes to connectivity to remote resource. VMPLS is even better. It's cheaper. It uses SD-WAN technology. So I just prefer that. I think for quality of service and the cost, um, it keeps happy customers. All right. Any other questions? Anyone want to raise their hand? They want to jump on audio? They want to chat? They want to send any more chats in? I can fly through these all day, guys. So if you get questions, go ahead and ask them. All right. Well, if there's no more questions, that is going to finish today. All right, John, I'll get your question in a second. Let me grab the link for the DoorDash sign up here. Give me just a moment. John, go ahead and ask your question. And in the meantime, there is today's link for your DoorDash credit. John, so that sounds like that's more of a support question. I kind of made a comment earlier of Windows machines. Most likely what's happening there is a Windows update. The problem, 3CX runs great on Windows, but you have to maintain your Windows updates, which goes against every MSP's rule of thumb of allowing Windows to update when it feels like it. The unfortunate part is, there are a lot of dependencies with Windows, and 3CX tries to stay up with those. So in order to keep the 3CX server functioning properly, the updates have to be up to date all the time and maintained. So I would suggest that you run the update, check the Windows Server Service Manager, and make sure that you don't have IIS running, or the disable firewall, disable the fire. No, you don't have to disable firewall, but antivirus or any of the security protocols. At the end of the day, guys, as much as it may make you cringe to take off antivirus and such from your Windows server, you're not uh, you're not browsing the internet with these things. You're not going to YouTube. You're not downloading stuff. You're not reading emails. You're not using it as a workstation. So you're not interacting with endpoints, uh, which you would normally maintain, or not maintain, but normally obtain a virus or something from. So it's okay to reduce those security procedures. Paul, the link to the recordings are going to be sent out. They're going to be uploaded to YouTube and then sent out at mass. If you need it sooner, you can email sales@telin.com. They may be able to get you a copy of it sooner. John, yes, Linux by far, in my opinion, is the best reliability at this point for a 3CX. Yeah, Kevin, that's the way to do it. I mean, if you're going to do 3CX, it's got to be on its own physical machine or its own virtual machine. You can never share it with a machine that's doing any kind of other web server. If it's doing DNS, if it's your company's domain controller, or if it's doing DHCP, it's just going to cause a problem with the 3CX services. What's going to happen is they're going to have conflicting bindings on the services, and one's going to turn off, the other one's not going to start, and it's going to be back and forth all the time. All right, had another burst of questions there. Any more? Now's the time, guys. You can always reach out to us and ask your questions privately. That's okay as well. Has everybody gotten the DoorDash link? Do I need to put it back in chat again? We're gonna terminate this web meeting here in just another minute or so. Ken, what I would do is call in and talk to one of our account reps. They can show you our VMPLS. Kyle actually, and I think there may even be something on YouTube. Mona, if you're on this meeting still, if you have that, he did a sales webinar, I think about 2 weeks ago, and he actually showed the VMPLS setup pretty good on that webinar, right at the end of the webinar. So that would kind of give you a better indication. It might be on our YouTube channel. Chris, if you can post our YouTube channel and our wiki or knowledge base again.
Yeah, for sure.
It looks like Mona's going to share that recording right now. Mona just responded in chat. So Ken, yeah, Mona's going to share that video of Kyle's sales webinar from a couple of weeks ago. Right at the end of that webinar, you should see he goes over the VMPLS setup. Now that's the Cadillac solution at the end of the day. You can do VPN IPsec as well, which works just as good. There you go. So you get a couple of links there. Mona's the one to the direct video, but Chris shared our YouTube channel and our knowledge base, which also has good reading material. All right, I see some people dropping off. Give you I'll wait another 30 seconds before I close the session, but unless someone asks another question, there's no other questions. Thank you for joining. Please reach out to us any further questions. We're going to be doing many webinars throughout the year, so keep an eye out for any marketing material or sign up sheets. We're glad to have you on them. Sure, John. Yep, this meeting is done with the 3CX WebRTC application.